What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Wednesday, October 30th, 2019. Middle of the weekday, hump day, starting that long, slow glide down to pow on Friday. Yesterday, the weather forecast was saying 3% chance of light rain. So, of course, it's coming down like cats and dogs. And they're now saying it's going to last into the weekend. So that, unfortunately, probably means we will not get a lot of trick-or-treaters tomorrow night, which, you know, we stocked up on the candy. You know, love Halloween and everything, but I think it's about to get rained out here. Anyway, we've got a lot to talk about today. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, ready to answer the phone. Put you on the air with your comments, questions, and opinions. And a little bit of personal news before we get started here, and that is that with the assistance of one of our family members who lives near us, I got my office put together this morning. The furniture all got moved around. The main computer got set up on the table, powered up, and is working fine. You can imagine my sense of relief there after the damage the movers did to Claire's setup. And it's going to take a few more days to get the audio hookups and everything done. I got a ton of catch-up work to do. But I would say definitely by next week, I'll be broadcasting using the higher quality camera, higher quality sound. I'm going to be hardlined into the internet rather than going over Wi-Fi. So the news is all good. But mostly it's just this incredible sense of relief that the machine is still alive. And I'm putting it through a 24-hour burn-in the other room and running all the diagnostics and everything. Seems to be working just fine. So again, huge sense of relief. All right, let's get into the news here, and we're going to start with Syria and the propaganda. And you know, the stories about Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi are meant to confuse and distract the world and to strengthen the fake narratives. First of all, the West supports Daesh in Syria. It isn't a secret. During the Obama administration, they were smuggling weapons from Libya to ISIS in Syria, using that consulate in Benghazi as the hub. And you know, they're trying to use al-Baghdadi to fortify the fake war on terror myth that we oppose terrorism when in fact the United States is one of the greatest exporters of terror around the world and has been for quite some time. And that's the ugly reality that Americans have got to come to understand, the true nature of their government. Well, it's not their government anymore. It's the government. The government thinks it owns us. That's not the way the country was set up. So, according to Friedman, the job of the U.S. president is to oppose any foe to ensure the survival of freedom, with the fact that U.S. interests and values still require us to remain engaged around the world in a sustainable way. In other words, preemptive wars on targeted nations threatening no one are okay as long as waged by the Pentagon and allied forces, the rule of law a non-issue. The so-called global war on terrorism is a hoax. It's a war of terrorism on humanity at home and abroad. So the United States was using ISIS and Al-Qaeda as imperial foot soldiers in Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, Yemen, and virtually anywhere else the Pentagon and CIA wants them to go. This issue of involvement by U.S. forces in combating ISIS is one of the biggest big lies about U.S. wars of aggression. Of course, they only started pulling that one when the first big lie about Syria, that Assad was gassing his own people, was exposed as a fraud. And you remember the story we had yesterday where a whistleblower inside the OPCW has come forward to say that the OPCW was editing their reports to put blame for some of these chemical attacks on the Syrian government and not on the U.S.-backed jihadis. So even they were caught up in the lie. Now, A lot of people are becoming very critical of Donald Trump's plan to, quote, control, end quote, Syria's oil. That includes retired General Barry McCaffrey. And McCaffrey posted the question on Twitter, what are we becoming? Pirates? Yeah. And he said, that oil belongs to Syria. And that ultimately the United States lacks the congressional authority to stay in the country at all. And that's why they're pushing this whole "we got Baghdadi" thing, so that you're not thinking about what are we doing as a country, which is an act of piracy, brigandry, or theft, or pillaging, or plundering, or whatever word you want to use. That's what it is. Syria never did anything to us to justify being invaded and plundered. It's just the U.S. says we have to control that oil, or more to the point, we have to control what currency that oil is sold for to protect the dollar. Assad is probably not going to want to chain Syria's oil to the U.S. dollar. And that's really a big part of what's going on here, is trying to keep international demand for dollars high by controlling natural resources and controlling what currencies they're traded in. And more countries are de-dollarizing, and it's only a matter of time before the whole system starts to fall apart. So, okay, over in Iraq, protesters pack the Baghdad square. The anti-government movement gains momentum. Tens of thousands of Iraqis protested in central Tahrir Square yesterday for a fifth day, angered by reports of security forces killing demonstrators in the city of Karbala and the Prime Minister's refusal to call for early elections. A lot of unrest all over the world right now. Now, some of it's created. More color revolution stuff, that may be what's happening over there in Lebanon here. But leader of the Islamic Revolution, Ayatollah Sayyid al-Khamenei, has warned that the United States and Western spy services funded by certain reactionary countries of the Middle East have been fomenting turmoil and insecurity in other regional states, calling for vigilance against sense enemy plots. And at least they're confronting the reality that not all of these protests and revolutions are organic grassroots events. They're being manufactured. They're being created. And Khamenei said that insecurity is the biggest damage a country could suffer, warning against plots being pursued by the enemies to rob regional countries of security. Out there sounding the warning, and I imagine that he's probably concerned that the United States is going to try and destabilize Iran. So, over in the House of Representatives, they passed a resolution recognizing the Armenian genocide. Now, this was kind of a symbolic poke in the eye for Turkey's turning away from the United States, moving toward Russia, buying Russian weapons, doing more business with Russia. So yes, now we'll recognize the Armenian genocide and condemn it. Israel didn't want that to pass, by the way. They want to maintain a monopoly on being the victims of genocide, which is ridiculous. There have been genocides throughout history, and not just against Israel. Part of their public relations is that they're trying to make it look like they're the only ones who get picked on. That doesn't really work. Now, Representative Omar is taking a lot of heat because she voted present on the Armenian genocide bill. She was one of 3 House representatives to vote present on the bill, and saying, we understand there was a genocide, but it shouldn't be used as a cudgel in a political fight. She said, that's what's going on here. The issue is the timing and the context. This is not being done to in any way help the Armenians. It's being done to insult and annoy and anger Turkey. So we'll see what's going to happen. Okay, article that came out of Caitlin's Johnston.com, and it goes back to this issue of the OPCW being used to promote regime change by pretending to be this independent organization concerned with chemical weapons, going into a country and then helping to frame the intended target. And apparently there are now 2 whistleblowers that have come forward that have cast serious doubts on the chemical weapons watchdog group. And of course, the corporate media is absolutely ignoring this. It's all part of that same system, that system of manufacturing lies, manufacturing consent, of tricking you and fooling you into going along with what the government wants you to do. Which usually involves copious amounts of money and possible risk to life and limb of your children. We have no choice but to go to war. And they are out there now really trying to sort of revive ISIS reputation. Remember when ISIS first showed up and they had all these videos and all these horrific, mostly staged events. But ISIS had kind of faded away from the public's mind here. But the United States needs a villain. So they've got an excuse. Oh, we've got to go back in here because ISIS is in here. So apparently an ISIS prisoner is predicting terror attacks on Europe in retaliation for al-Baghdadi's death. Together with some other comments that have been made recently, it says, false flag coming, people, heads up. Big, nasty false flag coming. Make you want to just hate ISIS enough to send your money and your children over there to deal with them. Now, this to me is a giveaway as to what's been going on with Lebanon. As you're probably aware, Prime Minister Hariri has tendered his resignation, and they're going to form a new government. So Mike Pompeo is calling on the Lebanese political leaders to form a new government, quote, to the needs of its citizens, end quote. So he's already in there tinkering and tampering and trying to put a positive face on it. But to me, he's just flashing a neon sign saying that the U.S. Government has been behind all of that writing, force Hariri from power. They've wanted him gone for a very, very long time. Okay, over in Washington, D.C., Jonathan Turley quoted in the Hill saying, the Democrats doth protest too much against the Durham investigation. And that is certainly true. They've shown quite a bit of concern and a modicum of fear over what might come out of that. And I think the concern is that Durham might actually do a real job investigating. We'll see. You know, the proof is in the pudding. I want to see the final report. But they're obviously very, very concerned about it. Or it could be another head fake. You know, trust us. We're going to fix things. You know, don't have a revolution. Don't have a rebellion. We promise you we're going to clean up this mess in Washington, D.C. ourselves. Hasn't happened yet. Trump promised to drain the swamp. Swamp is still there. Stinking as much as ever. Getting back over to this circus they're calling an impeachment hearing, the latest witness has been this Colonel Vindman, and he was the star witness in Adam Schiff's Chamber of Secrets. He wore his full-dress uniform to testify on his dislike of President Trump's Ukraine policy. Now, first of all, wearing the uniform, basically, if you're working for the White House, you don't wear your military uniform. It's all civilian clothes. So he was out there putting on this display. It was theater. You know, I'm an important man. I've got a uniform. I got brass things here and colored ribbons and all the rest of that. And his entire testimony is that he disliked Trump's Ukrainian policy. The story about the quid pro quo, that's already been discredited. because Ukraine was unaware of the holdup of U.S. aid during that phone call. Now, during questioning yesterday, Vindman admitted he shared the readouts, the transcripts of President Trump's call to Ukrainian President Zelensky with several other people. This is a violation of Title 18, Section 798. Technically, he's guilty of espionage. And Vindman admitted during testimony that he tampered with and tried but failed to alter the transcript of Trump's call to the Ukrainian president. So, not very good. Now, according to Devin Nunes, Adam Schiff was coaching Alexander Vindman throughout his entire testimony. And the idea that Schiff tells the witness not to answer questions, it's completely ridiculous, and all of this stuff should be made public here. Now, Jim Jordan has basically come forward saying that Adam Schiff prevented Republicans from asking Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman, White House's top Ukraine expert, questions at his closed-door testimony. Now, the Democrats are defending this by saying that Republicans are trying to find out who the secret whistleblower is, their line of questioning. Now, Jordan, who witnessed Vindman's deposition, said he couldn't go into detail about the questions Schiff blocked. He said it was pretty obvious that Schiff is just trying to maintain absolute control over the proceedings. Former CIA Chief John Brennan praised never-Trumper witness. I mean, Vindman is known to be a never-Trumper at this Soviet-style show trial. And apparently, DNC operative Alexandra Chalupa, who was behind the creation of the Russian hoax tweets, tweeted out her support of Vindman in Schiff's secret chamber. Oh, this is a good guy. He's going to help us nail Trump. You know, he's got to be good there. Meanwhile, Trump basher Liz Cheney lectures Trump supporters for the shameful questioning of Vindman. How dare you? There is supposed to be a right of cross-examination in these things here. Okay, the text of the impeachment resolution that they're debating today and will be voting on tomorrow, apparently the GOP Representative Nunes can only call in witnesses and introduce evidence with Adam Schiff's permission. That should tell you a lot about what's going on over there. Okay, we're going to take a phone call now. Kevin in West Virginia. Aloha, Kevin. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello today, Mr. Mike. Did I hear you correctly say that that guy that was the witness, he tried to tamper with the transcripts?
Yep.
That's isn't that like at least like not treason, but starts with an S. I can't think of it. Oh, that's a crime, though, is what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah.
A couple other things that are bothering me. So these people are allowed to question, like the corporate media and everything can question, this raid, which I think is right. I think we all have the right to question. But yet,
yes.
Look on the flip side, we can't question Sandy Hook or any of these other hoaxes that are out there. The hypocrisy. It makes me laugh, and it makes me laugh in disgust. But the one thing, the real reason why I wanted to call in was besides those couple points. I've been hearing a lot of chatter on the internet lately, the past couple of days.
Okay, I got to put you on hold. Don't hang up. We're going to take a break from commercial, and we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're still talking with Kevin in West Virginia. We're talking about the obvious double standards and hypocrisies surrounding this whole impeachment circus. And one good example of that, of course, is this concern over protecting the identity of their secret whistleblower. which is the font for everything that Adam Schiff and Nancy Pelosi are out there screaming about. And then you contrast that with the way that the U.S. government has treated both Edward Snowden and Julian Assange. And so there's clearly another double standard there.
There's a lot of double standards that I see here. The one thing before the break caught me that I was going to get at is, it's been a week since this Big Gotti raid, and I've been hearing a lot of chatter on the internet about something going to be happening up in Seattle this weekend, like a 9/11 style event. I was just wondering if you've been hearing this too, or if you've been running across this, and the timing seems perfect almost in my book. But I've been hearing, a little bit of chatter here and there that some type of attack going to be in Seattle this weekend. Hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully it's just rumors, but I think it is worth mentioning.
The rumor's definitely out there. And of course, Seattle has that Space Needle left over from the World Fair. That's an iconic symbolic target, just like the World Trade Towers were. Or they could go on out there and like to San Francisco and wreck a bridge, except right now most of California is on fire anyway, and nobody's going to really notice the additional damage.
Well, yeah, I think you're right. But I just, like I said a little while ago before, this whole hypocrisy, this whole, whenever you do something in secret, it's usually not good. It's usually criminal, or you don't want people to find out, you don't want people to find out when you're doing something in secret. But, it goes back to them using classifications to cover up their crimes, or non-disclosure agreements to cover up their crimes. Yes. I mean, I wish there was no such thing. I really do. Now, I know we need secrets to guard, some of our high-tech stuff. But as far as that, I wish this whole veil of secrecy and NDA and everything, I wish none of this was ever weaponized. Like, it's a joke to me. I mean, it's
weaponized against
America.
Us. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. But that's all I had for you, Mr. Mike. That's all I wanted to tell you today. I hope you have a great day and a great rest of the show.
Well, thank you very much there, and I hope the weather is good where you are, at least here. So thank you for the call, Kevin. We're going to let you go. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Now, interesting story that's just starting to hit the independent media. Apparently, former FBI Director James Comey likely doctored his memos in an effort to take down President Trump, and apparently the U.S. Senate may have the evidence. They have all these deep state operatives. I mean, and considering that Trump really hasn't carried his agenda forward, he's gone along with the war agenda, and you have to start asking, why is this man so hated and reviled by the establishment? Or is it, in fact, all being directed from Chappaqua and a very bitter woman who still cannot get over the fact that she lost in 2016? And at first it was, the women betrayed her. Then it was the fault of the independent media. And what was the most recent one? Flashing videos on the dark web. She can't let go. So it could very well be that she is going to try and step into the race next year, and she's going to lose for a third time because she's not seen as relevant anymore, and people are just getting tired of her bitterness. I know I am. So we'll see what happens. Anyway, Chuck Grassley has ripped into James Comey saying, "You missed key evidence in your Clinton investigation, and I'm going to find it." And one of the things he's doing is Grassley seeking the identity of Hillary Clinton's State Department staffers who deliberately transmitted classified information over private email. So a couple of weeks ago, the State Department completed their internal investigation into Hillary Clinton's private email server and cited 38 people for violations. Excuse me for the hiccups again. All right, we're going to go back to the phones. Mark in North Carolina. Aloha, Mark. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, how you doing, Mike? Mike, now that this comes out that the what do you call it, forensic expert Biden found out that Epstein definitely was murdered. Okay, this is incredible, and yet the corporate media still tries to push the Big Daddy story at us. How stupid do they think we are, Mike? I mean, they must think they got a nation of retards. I mean,
I don't think they think that we're stupid. They're hoping we're that stupid. All right, stay on the line. Got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking with Mark in North Carolina. And getting back to this recent story about Jeff Epstein, I think the real goal there is to keep people arguing over just how Jeff Epstein died rather than the growing number of voices that are asking if he is in fact actually dead or if he's down there in the Cayman Islands someplace or over in Israel.
So you know what they're going to do, Mike? At this point, I believe he's probably dead, okay? I mean, this guy Baden seems to be pretty reliable if you look through the years. He seems to, I think if this was somebody else's body that they, autopsy, he'd realize. So I'm pretty sure he's really dead, which shows you how badly the establishment wanted this guy out of the way. But you know what the corporate media is going to do now? Mine won't work. Maybe I'm wrong. We'll see. They're going to make this about prison security. They're going to have an investigation on federal prison security, especially the MCC. All right?
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, while they're at it, somebody should investigate what happened to Whitey Herzog. Whitey Bulger over there in prison when he was mysteriously moved, an 89-year-old inmate, frail inmate who was confined to a wheelchair, why he was moved to an even more violent maximum security prison, and I think he was murdered the first day he got there. So
yes.
Maybe they can this is not about prison security. This is about a federal system that wants to cover up as much as they can, using the federal prison system, I guess, to murder its potential informants. That's what it really wants to do. Now, Bulger was all over, Mueller. I mean, he, for all intents and purposes, Bulger, when he was in Boston, when he was in his prime, back I think in the 70s and 80s, for all intents and purposes, he was actually running the Boston office of the FBI. He wasn't just an informant; he was running the place. Yep. And he also, Mueller was the U.S. attorney of the district there at the time. So for all intents and purposes, Mueller at the time was his consigliere. Okay?
Yes.
That's what this comes down to. They're not going to investigate those things, though. They're going to find this and say, what can we do to improve federal prison security? Should we hire more guards? Should we do this? Should we train them better? Should we do that? That's what they're going to do. It's like when JFK was murdered when Lee Harvey Oswald was murdered right there in a police station in Dallas. Instead of they didn't really conduct the proper investigation, but instead they would have talked about, well, what can we do to improve the performance of the Dallas Police Department? Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, they're going to try everything they can, Mike, to limit this as much as they could. I don't think they expected Biden to come out with this. I think they probably thought Biden would go along with the program, but he didn't. Okay? This is really now going to be interesting. But I'm telling you, Mike, we'll see. I think they're going to do it. They're going to make it about an investigation. And by the way, I was listening to Alex Jones earlier. Jones is getting me more and more disgusted. He said it's not the fault of the federal system. It's the fault of New York City officials because they directly run the MCC. That is either a lie or Jones is really completely ignorant. The MCC is a federal prison. It's a holding facility. It's a pre-trial facility, the biggest federal prison of that type in the country. Okay, it has just like it safely brought El Chapo to trial.
Yes,
a lot of notorious inmates there. It is run by the federal government, and the BOP, the Bureau of Prisons, is under the Justice Department. So this
Yes.
this is Barr. Okay, he's really responsible. All right, and this is why I don't trust Barr and the other investigations either. Barr is dirty, going back a long ways. He's hiding with
Yes.
the bushes and everything else. I don't trust him as far as I can throw him. I don't know where this is all going to lead, Mike. I think this country is pretty soon. If we don't do something, instead of having the eagle as our, as our symbol, we should have a big banana as our symbol, because that's what we're becoming.
Yes. Yeah.
We're a banana republic. That's all I got to say, Mike. I'll let you go, okay, buddy?
All right. Well, thanks an awful lot. Thank you for the phone call. Now, over at Judicial Watch, Tom Fitton has come out with an announcement that they have obtained records showing contact between Peter Strzok and Bruce Orr that the Department of Justice claimed they couldn't find. So there's another big cover-up going on over there as well. The whole system is rotted. They are all corrupt, and it just goes for year after year. They go from one corrupt position to another corrupt position to another corrupt position. And the scale of it all is what's really scary about all of this. That we're not just dealing with one or two corrupt officials. We're dealing with an entirely corrupted system. Anyway, now getting back over to Congress, the Democrats, of course, are still running this Ukraine probe on which they're hanging their hope for impeachment. And for some reason, given that this does involve Ukraine, Joe Biden and Hunter Biden are excluded. They're not being investigated. Even though Hunter Biden had this high-paying job on a Ukraine natural gas company, while Joe Biden was the point man for the Obama White House in Ukraine, a country that is notorious for corruption, especially in the energy industry. But he's being protected, at least for the moment. I guess somebody in the Democratic Party thinks he still has a chance of running next year, but the latest word I'm getting is that he's going to drop out because he just can't get the money to run a decent campaign. Nancy Pelosi is out there whining that, if Trump spends more money than the Democrats, he's going to win again, which is pretty much accurate. But on the other hand, the Democrats have been self-destructing. If you look at who they gave us during the 2018 midterms and how they're behaving, if you look at the behavior of the snowflakes, people are turning off from the Democratic Party. They don't see the Democratic Party as the party of the people anymore, which is what the Democrats used to claim to be. The Democrats used to be the anti-war party. Now, they're as pro-war as anybody else these days. Alrighty, Max Blumenthal has been arrested and charged with assault in a political case he says is completely false and manufactured by Venezuela opposition supporters. So from April to May, supporters of Juan Guaido's attempted coup in Venezuela surrounded the Venezuela embassy in Washington, D.C. They engaged in verbal and physical assaults that authorities largely permitted to happen. Blumenthal, who's the editor of Gray Zone, reported on the anti-war and international solidarity activists who attempted to protect the embassy from Guaido supporters. And according to reporter Ben Norton, a team of D.C. police officers appeared at Blumenthal's door at just after 9 a.m., demanding entry and threatening to break his door down. A number of officers had taken positions to the side of his home like they were prepared for a SWAT-style raid. Of course, we know the United States is backing Juan Guaido. He's kind of self-destructed, unfortunately. Issues of his own corruption and so forth. Alrighty, Tulsi Gabbard is holding a press conference tomorrow to demand the U.S. government release documents that implicate Saudi Arabia in 9/11. And That's taking a lot of courage. Way to go, Tulsi. It's not going to succeed, because if the U.S. government releases anything that links Saudi Arabia to 9/11, the American people, first of all, they're going to know they got lied to about 9/11 in the first place, and they're going to say, why were we bombing Afghanistan and Iraq for something Saudi Arabia did? The lie will be exposed here. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the economic news. Basically, Barney's out there saying the Democrats are going to kill the economy by taxing it to death. Saying if you're a Democrat who supports Medicare for all, pick your poison. You can ruin your political career and destroy your own party by imposing a ruinous new sales tax, a gargantuan income tax hikes, or a surtax on corporate income that could wreck thousands of businesses. This is the cost of bold plans like the Green New Deal and Medicare for all. This is all being pushed and sold by Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren and most of the other Democratic presidential candidates. It's time to think big and move to a health plan that covers everyone. Now, the last time we got a government-engineered health plan, we wound up with higher premiums, higher deductibles. Obamacare, remember Obamacare? Okay. Talking about $3 trillion in new spending that this country just does not have here. So there's a good little article over at Lou Rockwell. Have the bankers and politicians taken America to the end of its financial rope? And they go all the way back to the end of World War II and Bretton Woods, where the United States was engineered to be a consumer economy, high-paying jobs, we could buy stuff, and the rest of the world was basically deemed to be supplier countries with low wages so that the United States could get cheap products. That's kind of where American imperialism really got its start, and for a while it worked. Now we've built up so much debt, the system can't absorb it here. Over at the Mises Institute, they're saying that a global monetary failure is becoming inevitable. I'm in absolute agreement with that. And we have another caller on the line. Al in Canada, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. You're just talking about publicly funded health care, or the lack of it in the United States of America. When you were in the private sector, Mike, before you retired, how much were you paying for health care per year?
Boy, it was a lot. Claire? She's back in her office. It was a lot. It was a lot. They made money off of me because, I didn't get sick back then.
Yeah. Hey, that's how it works, right, Mike? That's how it works. So I'm not advocating publicly funded health care. I'm just pointing out something that no one even mentions. Everyone that's paying for insurance for health care won't be paying that insurance anymore at all. And in fact, what will happen is you won't be paying deductibles. And on top of that, you won't have people growing rich over this for just doing administrative work, let alone the doctors who,
yes,
some of them are millionaires in your country, right, Mike?
Yes. A good doctor makes a good amount of money, but hospitals very often they rate their doctors not on the quality of the health care, but by how much billing they generate. Yes,
I've watched a few of the House episodes and some other ones out there. I kind of understand how it works in the private sector, but it is a massive undertaking And I don't see a lot of people that are up to that challenge in the government that exists in the United States right now, Mike, to even do something like this.
Well, I mean, it's because of the government that the system spun out of control. That goes back to Richard Nixon and the managed health care, the Health Maintenance Organization Bill. And that's what turned medicine from being about health into being just another money-making sector. Because before that, there were actually legal limits on how much money hospitals and doctors could make off the patients. The patients had to pay the costs of the treatment and the medications and so forth, and the hospitals were allowed to put a little uplift on top of that to meet their overhead. But there were strict limits on it, and all that went away thanks to Richard Nixon.
Yeah, it became another thing you could add to GDP. Yeah. Right? Yep. I think now, I remember Obama years ago talking about, the healthcare sector in the United States is about $2 trillion. And there it is right there.
Yep.
Big number. So, looking at that, privatized, our publicly funded healthcare should be a lot less than $2 trillion, considering that no one's really making any profit. There's no profit to be made off of it. So,
well, I disagree with that. I mean, ultimately, we, the people, will be made to pay for whatever it is they come up with. Maybe not directly, maybe not writing a check to the medical centers and stuff, but they're already admitting this is going to require new taxes to pay, and guess who pays those taxes?
People using the system. Well, everybody, actually.
Yeah, that's it.
But
Everybody.
at the same time, yes. But at the same time, you're not paying for healthcare premiums through a private insurance company, where someone is just sitting back, like I said, doing administrative work and making $150,000 a year when they should actually be making closer to 40 or 50.
Well,
it's a hard argument, Mike.
Yep. I think it's clearly a bad idea. And one of the reasons I think so is because of what happened when we had Obamacare shoved on us. And they said, if you like your doctor,
that was shoved.
Your doctor. Yeah, that was shoved down our throats and up our nose.
Yeah, and he clearly lied. It was all a lie.
Yep.
They have to vote on it so they can see what's inside. Is he trying to impeach your president?
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, listen, Al, we got to let you go. Take a break for commercial. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And the rain just stopped, at least for a while outside, and the birds are all over the rail eating birdseed, which I put out there expressly for that purpose here. We're finishing up here with the economic news. The world right now is sitting on a 400 trillion with a T time bomb. What they're talking about here is a massive shortfall in retirement savings, which has been engineered into the financial system. It's a problem so big, it's 4 times the global economy by the year 2050. We keep hearing more and more about how retirement is really going to be out of reach for most Americans in the coming years. Forget about working your 20 and then having a nice, comfortable retirement. The new policy is work them till they drop, apparently. Yesterday, we talked about how New York City is shipping homeless people all over the country and gives them a year's worth of rent and other goodies to induce them to go to someplace else. And I mentioned how we had this huge homeless problem on Oahu. And as it turns out, according to this article that came on out from DC Clothesline, Honolulu is one of the cities where New York City is sending the homeless people without informing the local government. They just walk off the airplane and they're homeless there. And especially as we head into winter, if you got to be homeless someplace, Hawaii certainly beats New York City. Okay. Something I've always wondered is, homeless people do die, especially this winter, they're going to freeze to death. What do they do with the bodies? Is there a potter's field out there someplace? Are they commercially exploited? The way Planned Parenthood commercially exploits dead babies? Become a very, very cynical society here. Okay. We've noted in recent years the decline of our university system and its transformation from being places of learning and discussion and research into rigid enforcers of the status quo and political correctness. And apparently there's this historian, Niall Ferguson. He says it's now become routine where conservative professors in American universities are targeted by the hard left Marxists. And usual procedure is to first lie about something conservative or a libertarian supposedly said to whip up a Twitter mob into this frenzy. And then the local media pick up from Twitter and they pile on the story on what was usually somebody who's completely innocent of the original accusation. And the end result, of course, is that universities are now hardcore liberal, hardcore left. And we have to take a break for station identification. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Now, those poor people out in California, I mean, they're dealing with these rolling blackouts. They're dealing with these wildfires. In fact, right now, California has turned into a state, illuminated only by the fires. So it's not just third world, it's virtually medieval. And they're dealing right now with what they're calling an extreme wind event that began yesterday. It's extending through today, expected to go through tomorrow. Winds of something like 80 miles an hour. And they've already got 17 wildfires currently burning in the state. Because of the wind event, they're expecting those to spread because the embers are just being blown everywhere. In fact, there's been a new fire that just broke out in Southern California that is threatening the Reagan Presidential Library. And apparently the site is already covered in heavy, thick smoke. Concerned, for that, just like they're concerned over the Getty Center. And to me, this is just gross mismanagement. And I understand with these kind of winds, keeping the fire breaks open wouldn't have really helped. But these fires happen on a regular basis. I remember one time when I was working in downtown Hollywood, and there was a raging fire in the Santa Monica Mountains. Step out the door and it was there, right in front of us. So the fires are a reality like the earthquakes, and unlike the earthquakes, they don't seem to really be as prepared for the fires where I sit. And we had that caller who called in yesterday saying, California's got the money, it's just being misspent. It's not being spent on taking care of the state, its infrastructure, and its people. That seems to be a problem all over the country right now. Yesterday we talked about how the insurance companies have yanked fire coverage for something like 350,000 of their policy holders, saying right now it's just too risky. Not in the business of taking risks. I imagine there's going to be some lawsuits over that one. That's the business you're in. I give you money and then something bad happens to me, you give me money back to deal with it. Don't just take the money in and then when things are looking dicey, say the deal is off, which is what they're saying. So now PG&E is being sued by those same insurance companies because apparently some of these smart meters that have been installed in California homes caught fire. Now, you remember the old-fashioned analog power meter was all aluminum, and it was designed to be fireproof because the entire current for the house is going through them. These new smart meters, they're made with plastic, they're made with other flammable materials, and apparently it has caused complications. So PG&E is not going to be around much longer. And I'm starting to hear talk within the California politicians that it's time for the state to take control. I mean, if you go back to, even just back to what happened out in Hinckley, California with the hexavalent chromium, and realize it's been bad decision-making all along here. Okay, Turning Point USA founder Charlie Kirk was at a Wild, Ohio University culture war event trying to defend his support for green card giveaways, drag queens, and Israel. And apparently it was a very intense session. At one point, Charlie Kirk basically came on out and said that the survivors of Israel's attack on the USS Liberty are all conspiracy theorists. Didn't really happen. They're all conspiracy theorists. So Joe Meador got on his case, understandably, because Joe Meador was there and saw what happened, and Charlie Kirk was not. Okay, we're going to take another phone call. Peter in Los Angeles, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, Mike, I just wanted to just briefly point out that insurance companies are unique in their business model. Like normally, you pay somebody, enter into a contract with a business, they're to deliver something, you pay for what they're supposed to deliver, and you pay what they ask you to deliver for that service. Well, with insurance companies, and a successful company usually is one that performs the service better than their competitors and does it for a little less money. With insurance companies, uniquely, it's their business model. The ones that are successful are the ones that enter into a contract to insure something with you and then don't pay off on it. So the ones that most successfully don't pay off are the ones that are really the most successful insurance companies. It's unique as a business model.
Yes, it is. And it's not just a refusal to pay off. Again, going back to Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, which was actually written by the health insurance industry, allowed the premiums, but mostly the deductibles, to go up. And that meant that the insurance companies had to pay less of your medical bills when you got sick, and you had to pay more. And it made them immensely profitable.
And it's the same with cars or homeowners insurance or whatever. If they can successfully weasel out of what they're contracted to supply, then that makes them successful. So,
well, there are thankfully some exceptions, and I have to put in a good word here for State Farm, who carries our auto insurance policy, because when we needed them to be there, they were courteous, they were quick. They didn't try and find some clause in the insurance contract where they could say, well, we really don't, we're not under obligation to cover this. They took good care of us. We're still with them. And so some insurance companies are successful because they do a good job at what they're doing.
Well, that's a good plug for them, and I'll keep that in mind, Mike. But there's a lot of them that you can see with the wildfires. They're already basically pissing backwards on their claims. So
yeah, they are.
The sad part about it is that business model seems to be what everybody in other industries are starting to migrate to. It's finding a company that lives up to its obligations and and what you entered into business with successfully is getting harder and harder to do at any level. But
well, that's another sign about our declining economy.
Yeah, it is. It truly is. It's an interesting thing that they're talking about. A guy I had lunch with about the way that we know the banks are. And by the way, I saw on what really happened that they're going to, in Britain, they're trying to prosecute the LIBOR, basically the rigging LIBOR.
Yes.
It was on your site, and yeah, I thought that's good news. But thank God for that, because there's another industry that everything they do is crooked, pretty much. Everything is rigged, everything is crooked. They never get investigated, like the Federal Reserve never gets audited, or whatever. But we were talking about retirement and how everything is getting expensive, and how I recommended, we live in Los Angeles, that he buy a couple cases of MREs, and you can easily throw that in the back of your car and evacuate your home. It's like 7,500 calories, or some enormous caloric deal, and they'll keep for years and so on. Because, and we went over, a quarter of the world's pigs are dying or dead, and
Actually,
can't use the Gulf of
now.
Mexico. What was it really?
Yeah.
Can't use the Gulf of Mexico for food for fishing. Can't use the North Pacific for fishing. Midwest harvest, a disaster. And people are going to start bidding up. If they can't use pork, they're going to bid up beef. They're going to beat up what fish we have, and they're going to bid up everything else. And, about the only cheap protein will be eggs, I guess. But, the whole thing is collapsing, Mike.
Yeah, it's all coming apart here. And, for the sake of the election, we got to keep the voters, thinking everything is just hunky-dory. And we had that story that we did the other day where a top farming expert is saying there is a massive food shortage on the way, and the government doesn't want you knowing about it. Now, that to me is poor management, because the government should be saying right now, times are going to get hard. Get ready now. Get MREs, get freeze-dried, whatever. And thank goodness that one of the things we did bring with us from Oahu was our freeze-dried emergency food, because we've got enough here to basically feed Claire and I, for I think about 2 months.
Well, I'm telling you, that's going to come in handy. I think we're approaching the let them eat cake moment, and what we have discussed in the past, Mike, where the end of this country could easily come, where everybody now who's lucky enough to have a job has gone from 1 or 2 payroll deductions to 14 or whatever the limit is to get more cash, right? And they're having to make but April the 15th is coming up, and at some point they're going to say, "What do I feed my girl, my kids, or do I cut this check on the 15th?" And they're going to say, "Hell no," and they won't be able to make ends meet with food, with housing, with everything else. And at that point, the government's going to collapse. Yes.
Well, the government can just have the Federal Reserve go on printing all the money that it needs. But the American people are feeling very much overtaxed, and you've got the Democrats out there actually campaigning on promises to raise taxes for the Green New Deal and for Medicare for all.
That including
I guess
all the
they imagine
that can come in illegally.
Just raise our taxes, raise. Not going to happen.
And including all the foreigners that can come in here illegally, they get it as well. So, and can't pay taxes and get land or welfare and food stamps. But anyways, that's my comment, Mike. I just how's Claire feeling? How are you feeling?
She's doing fine, we're just hunkered down here because of all the rain. But she's going to be going to see more family on Saturday, which will give me some time to unpack some of the last of the boxes still in the garage.
Well, you got your weekend cut out for you, man. But hey, I got to run off, Mike. Thanks very much, guy.
All right. Thanks a lot, Peter. We're going to let you go and switch over to Mark in Georgia. Aloha, Mark. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? We lost Mark. Okay. Now, apparently, Mark Zuckerberg, following his appearance at Congress, is now out there dropping hints about setting up his own news network. And that obviously has the existing corporate news media very concerned, because he's already exerting all this control over what is on the net. Okay, Mark in Georgia is back. Aloha, Mark. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
I don't know if you've heard this movie called Official Secrets starring Keira Knightley, but it's about how this whistleblower was harassed and abused for revealing that Tony Blair was basically contriving false accusations to justify the invasion of Iraq, some time ago. Have you heard of this movie?
Yeah, I've heard of it. I don't know much about it, and I haven't seen it. But we do know that, George W. Bush and Tony Blair were, just lying to get Great Britain and the United States into Iraq. Yeah,
and that's where Vince Bugliosi was the man who prosecuted he prosecuted, Charles Manson way back.
Yes.
Because he was the one who, although Charles Manson did not personally kill anyone, he was the one directing the cult who carried out the murders. And so Vince Bugliosi, people that think that George W. Bush was this great president, whatever, I would recommend, go to YouTube and type in Vince Bugliosi and the prosecution of George W. Bush for murder. Because I think we're all fed up with these false. The thing that really disgusts me more than anything else is people who think that Trump announcing that Baghdadi has been killed for the nth time is actually a legitimate announcement. I'm like, well, here we go again,
Yeah.
It's been a kind of a recurring theme where, one thing I've learned is that the deception tends to go in vilification on one side and delusional exaltation on the other, where one side, all the evil is attributed to they way over there, whether politically, geographically, ideally both, especially handy where there's a language barrier where people don't really know how to look at the original source of what was actually said or meant.
Yeah.
And then they exalt the people on our side that make these accusations like FDR, this dastardly unprovoked sneak attack. Like, excuse me, you've done everything you could to provoke the attack. And the Japanese had sent an emissary whose mission it was to declare war before the attack began. So they intentionally stalled him. So yes, it was a sneak attack, but not from the enemy foreign, but the enemy domestic. And, it troubles me how the enemy domestic continues to operate with impunity, where I call him Bradley. I'm sorry I hope I don't go to jail for misgendering or something, but I'm like, look, he's got male DNA, a predominantly male neurostructure, and his genitalia was likely mutilated in cosmetic surgery because he was tortured for an extreme period of time for the heinous crime of revealing the truth, Just like Lincoln locked up 12,000 people like you and I for simply telling the truth. There was no rebellion. So, thanks, man. I guess it doesn't mean much to you that you're in my prayers, but I believe you have legitimate questions that deserve legitimate answers. And sometimes the best answer you can give is ask Job. When Job was asking all these questions about why all these things happened the way they did, and God basically said, I don't have an answer that's going to make sense to you. There's times where that's about all you can do is say, well, there's things that are not going to make sense on our level. Does that make sense? That much?
Yeah.
And like I say, I wish somebody had given you better answers when you were young and had questions that really needed to be answered, because I believe you have legitimate grievances, and I'm against the corruption of religion. I'm against the corruption of Judaism. I'm against the corruption of Islam. I'm against the corruption of all religions, but there's two sides to religion. There's a good side of being bound back to the Creator by humble submission on His terms. And then there's the bad side of where people try to control other people by basically leading people to believe that if you don't have our approval, God's not going to let you into heaven. And it's like, God says, it don't work that way. So, like I say, I don't know, when is it? You know when that movie Official Secrets is supposed to come out?
I don't know, but I imagine if you go over to imdb.com, they probably have a listing for it already. Anyway, Mark, we got to take a break for commercials. Thank you for the phone call. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. And it's about to get a little bit crazier out there in LGBTQ, PFD, PSD, LSMFT, BBD&O world, because we've all been following this controversy over these biologically male athletes who declare themselves to be women, and they're going into women's sports, and of course they're cleaning up all the awards. They've got the physical advantage. Well, now biological male transgenders want the entertainment industry to start treating them like they're females. Actors Equity is literally put out a statement demanding that Broadway and Hollywood start casting these male transgenders into non-transgender roles. And the attitude that they're coming out with is the viewing audience will pretend they're all real women. No, we won't. And it's silly. It's really silly. Anyway, if you are into hummus, you need to be aware there's a recall going on hummus from Sainsbury's, Morrison's, Aldi, Lidl, Asda, and Nando. It's being urgently recalled over concerns that it contains salmonella. And you want to check with your local store here. Okay, let's talk about human-caused global warming, because we're about to get a major dose of it out west here, starting actually pretty much today. Story coming on out from Investment Watch blog. The real climate crisis is not global warming. It is global cooling. Solar activity is at a record low. Winter is coming early again. Global warming group doesn't want to give up their power, their access to the media, so they're still out there pushing the agenda. Now, yesterday we were talking about an adjunct professor who literally got forced out of their position for simply saying, no, the polar bears are not in decline. They're not under threat. They're not dying off because of human-caused global warming. Well, it's happened again already. And this time it happened to a professional zoologist, Susan Crockford. And she came on out. I mean, she did a project documenting the increases in polar bear populations for which she has been fired. Because you don't do research that goes against government wants here. Now, Greta Thunberg is still out there making headlines. She's refusing to accept a 40,000-pound environmental award, saying the climate movement does not need awards. We need politicians to listen to science. Well, Greta, that may be a big part of the problem. Because after looking at year after year of utterly failed predictions, Politicians are looking at the science and they're saying there's nothing there. I mean, how many of these record cold winters do we have to go through before somebody's willing to stand up and say, Al Gore is full of it, along with the rest of his choir? You go back to the 1990s and all these dire predictions, these doomsday predictions they were making. None of them came true. Polar bears are doing well. Seas aren't rising. Al Gore bought a beachfront house in California. Should tell you something right there. But you can read my article on ClimateGate, and especially with the move and everything. I haven't added the more recent news, but there's a lot in there about why this is nonsense and why it's being sold as a new religion. You will believe in human-caused global warming, and because you are a human being, you are a sinner and part of the problem. I'll tell you how to fix it for a small fee. Over at Google, YouTube has removed a channel on the building of the Trump border wall, saying it is hate speech and promotes violence. That's their rationale for that. They don't want anybody looking at that wall being built. And that may very well be because that's going to be one thing that Trump will be campaigning on next year. You know, the wall has been started. We're going to get it up there. But YouTube has become pretty much useless. So is Google. And they haven't banned me yet, but then I haven't put anything up in quite a while. All right, there's the music. We need to take another break here for commercials. Join us on the air, 800-313-9443. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. And we're talking about how the social media giants are now acting as gatekeepers. What you can see, read, and hear, they're now as compromised and corrupt as the corporate media. And that's a shame, because that was one of the great gifts of the internet age and the independent media, was people had an alternative to go to. And somebody set up these social media companies like Google to basically lure people into a dependency on their services. And now that they're sort of Google-fied, Google can now start changing their search algorithms so that you only see a certain point of view. That's what the media, whether it's corporate or electronic, isn't supposed to do. Fundraising site GoFundMe is now deplatforming vaccine skeptics. They claim they're stopping conspiracy theories. So GoFundMe has jumped on the bandwagon by banning all anti-vaxxers from raising money through its platform, because apparently only pro-vaxxers deserve to fundraise. So GoFundMe has now put itself in the position of actually dictating medical policy for the American people. I don't think that's particularly a good idea. All right. Now, Instagram and Facebook have now banned all sexual emojis, including the eggplant and peach, and they're outlawing photos with emojis covering sensitive areas. This is because the rapper Kanye says social media tempts men like the devil tempted Jesus. Got to keep you all pure out there. Alrighty. You're probably hearing this everywhere. It was even on our local radio station this morning. If you own an older iPhone or iPad, update to the latest version of the operating system by Saturday, or you could lose your internet connection. And apparently this is an issue with the GPS timing signal that pops up from time to time, which tells us that GPS was deployed without being fully tested and evaluated here. Now, pardon me, the latest iPhone iOS update 13.2 still allows Apple workers to listen to your conversations recorded by Siri. Now, supposedly somewhere in the control panel, there is a means to opt out or delete them, but Apple is going back to the use of humans to review Siri commands and dictation. Apparently, the automated system really did not work out all that well. All right. Over in India, their largest nuclear power plant has been hit with a cyber attack. And it stopped operating on the 19th of this month. It is suspected that the Kudankulam nuclear power plant was hit by a cyber attack, and authorities were already alerted to the threat months in advance. Even as cybersecurity experts are investigating the case, the authorities were quick to dismiss any occurrence of a spyware infiltrating their system. Power plant project, built in collaboration with Russia, had been a target of foreign players since it started. There's another ransomware out there. It's called Paradise. And there is now a decryptor issued by, Emsisoft, and it's free. It will allow you to decrypt your files. And apparently this Paradise ransomware has been encrypting victims and users for like 2 years. Unless they recover from backups, which a lot of people are not keeping proper backups, or they paid the ransom. So I want to know who's doing all this and why the government seems so unconcerned. Okay, let's see. Apparently we've had another unpleasant incident where a dozen cops literally pointed their guns at a teenager in an argument over a $2.75 fare. And the crowd surrounding them, of course, fled. Concerned about bullets flying. Remember that incident in New York where the NYPD wanted to arrest this guy and they shot him down? And they hit a lot of bystanders. Mike in the control room is saying, is that NSA, CIA are the ransomware creators? Could very well be. In fact, according to Kaspersky Labs, the hacker collective, the Equation Group, tracks back to the NSA. So it's just another way to suck more money out of the American people and American businesses. We're being looted and plundered over the internet. Okay. Tesla has admitted that U.S. revenues have collapsed 39%, and demand is just falling. There have been too many of these ugly incidents of these cars killing people. That one about the let's see, let me reply to somebody. So distracting. What can I tell you here? Now, Hillary Clinton is out there celebrating the fact that Twitter has made a decision to stop political advertising on their channel. It's probably going to be a good thing. It might actually bring back Twitter's popularity because there are too many ads to begin with, and too many of them are political rants. Facebook has a different approach. Facebook says it's okay for a politician to lie in the ads they place on Facebook. Well, we know the politicians are going to lie. Your lips are moving. But I don't think we should develop this attitude where this is permissible and it's okay. All righty. This one here. It's an update on the latest wildfire in Southern California. And they've had to evacuate the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library and nearby homes. So they're concerned about that. All right, we're going to take another phone call here. Tom in Florida, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Good day to you, Michael. Yeah, you're talking about global warming. But before I go there, I'm going to say this about the demon rats. If they're not going to follow the Constitution, Michael, what is treason? I mean, if these demon rats don't follow the Constitution with this impeachment crap, what is treason to this country, you know?
Yes.
These Democrats are trying to do this. It's nonsense. It's nincompoop crap. Look at Obama when he's on a hot mic telling Medvedev, whatever, when I get elected again. None of these Schumers or none of these said anything about him or what Clinton was doing. Trump doesn't do nothing wrong, and they're going after him like banshees. It's insanity what's going on with this crap with these Schumers and these Pelosi's and these knuckleheads in the demon rat party. But one thing, Michael, you're talking about global warming. The global warming, right now, I don't know if you know, but Chicago's, my nephew called me, it's 38 degrees in Chicago right now. So I guess the good thing I'm trying to say about the weather is that Chicago's not going to have a big murder rate maybe this year, because if it's cold for the next 3 months, maybe it'll freeze the murder rates. You know, maybe they won't have such astronomical.
One could hope, but you know, Chicago has a reputation, you know, for being cold anyway, especially when the wind whips up coming off the lake, and they call it, you know, the hawk. And
yeah, well, the windy. Yeah, Michael, but I think what's going to happen for next 3 months, I think their murder rate will go down quite a bit, because they're not going to come out there when it's really, really cold and do their insanity. So I just think that's a plus for the city of Chicago. Getting back to,
I hope you're right. I hope you're right.
Well, yeah, we'll know at the end of the year. I'm sure it's going to be a little better than it was last year. Last year was, I think it was 1,700 or whatever the case. But getting back to immigration also, Michael, I'm watching OAN right now, actually, and they were talking that last year enough people came in to our country illegally that could fill up the whole city of Austin, more people that live in the city of Austin, Texas. If the Republicans have any chance of holding on for power for the next 30, 40, or 50 years, they better take all these illegals and start massive deportations like Eisenhower. Because if they don't,
I agree.
This whole country will end up like New Jersey. This whole country will be like New Jersey or New York.
Or at the very least, given the shortness of time until the election, you know, and Trump should have done this when the GOP controlled both sides of Congress, you know, was pass a mandatory nationwide voter ID law. Are you really the person whose name is on this registration? Are you really a legal citizen of this country and eligible to vote? Because the Democrats are counting on the illegal immigrant vote to put them over the top next year.
That is correct. And, you know, I don't know if you heard this, Michael, but Donald Trump's suing the state of California through the Supreme Court right now to end all sanctuary cities. And
yes.
If it goes to California, and it was on the news just now. So I want to see now how the Supreme Court's going to treat this. And, you know, like you always say in Article 8, there's no such thing as a sanctuary city. These people, like I always tell you, I know Dustin's sick of hearing it, these people have to be arrested, or some kind of penalty has to come down on these people hard. Because what it's showing the Anglo population is we're not coming here to compliment you. We're coming here to eat your lunch and take your jobs. That's exactly what's going on here. And by these billions of dollars pouring out of the country, never to come back, that in itself is treasonous. that the Democratic Party's getting away with. They should all be putting behind gray bars, the gray bar hotels, because every one of these dirty demon rats and a few rhinos they have allowed to happen in this country is disgusting and disgraceful. These people are coming here after 1 or 2 jobs, getting federal government jobs. I mean, black Americans are not even getting some of these jobs these people are getting. I mean, it's got to stop. Got to stop.
I agree.
And I'm sure there's a lot of Afro-American people who listen to your show, Michael. And I know they're wonderful people. And I can tell you, they're the ones that should be out the most vocal about this because it's taking jobs away from them more than anybody.
Yes.
In L.A. and all these other states and cities. I don't see a big black wave of people, black Americans, saying, hey, enough of this crap. This immigration is destroying our culture, a chance to move up. So, I'm just waiting for that shoe to drop, too, on that issue. Because it's just off the charts what's going on with this immigration.
It is.
Thank goodness we do have something there, Michael, because of what you would have never heard about none of this stuff if it was about a Democrat in there right now. They would already had this place for 50 million illegals. And you know what? The main thing, Michael, one thing I don't know if you really heard today, it was on Fox News. It was on OAN today. They're talking about all the people that are coming here. They do not want to learn the English language. And that, to me, is the biggest problem. These people are coming here in the multiple millions, and you know what they're basically telling the gringos? We don't want to speak your lingo. We're going to speak our own lingo. Mi habla español. You understand? No.
Yes.
No other culture's got allowed away with that. There's over 110 million Germans in this country, and none of them people are speaking German by the millions, multiple millions, or radio stations, TV stations. This has got to be the linchpin that Trump says that's it. No more. Enough is enough. And you know what? The federal government is supposed to be the power on immigration. How is the state of California or all these other states telling the federal government? We had a civil war because of this, because the states wanted to break away from the federal government. Well, the federal government's supposedly running immigration, but I guess these states are telling them, no, you're not. We're running our own states, and we're going to tell you what about immigration. No, this has got to come to a halt. This has got to come to an end right now. I want to see what's going to happen here in the next 2 to 3 months before the new year starts. I want to see some real act, but I do say this. Trump is suing the state of California for sanctuary cities being illegal, and it's going all the way up to the Supreme Court. That's going to be a very interesting scenario.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to be keeping a close eye on that one.
Yes, that right there is the main. I think the main issue is going to happen in the 2020 campaign next year when they start really getting hot and heavy with the campaigning. I think that's when we're going to see where we're going to see how the chickens come home to roost on this one. With the language, these people are not coming here. They don't have to only be Spanish. There's other groups that are coming here. They want to keep their own cultural language. That wasn't allowed to happen during the turn of the century, Michael. The Italians, the Poles, the Danes, they all had it. It took a while, but after 20, 30 years, these people had autonomy. These people are basically saying, no, we got 20 radio stations in Spanish, and we only got 3 in English. And we got all these newspapers, more newspapers in a different language in English. You cannot have a country become We'll be like the Balkans. We'll be Balkanized. We will become Bosnia, Herzegovina, and all that nonsense. When Clinton was president, what was happening with that nonsense? And we don't need that here. Don't need it.
No,
we have one constitution that's made in English. Okay? And that's the language. I tell you, pretty soon you're gonna have to make English an official language. And that's gonna be a big battle with the Democrats because they'll never do it. Hell, they allow these people to come here to flying their own flags. These demon rats are insane. This Ocasio Cortez is like you said yesterday, she's blaming the white man. She's blaming white people for the hurricanes blowing up all these brown islands. It's a white man creating these hurricanes aiming right at the brown islands. That was on the news yesterday. You heard about that?
I heard about that. We talked about that. Yeah, we talked about it on the show yesterday.
It was just on OAN there was talking about it.
Okay. All right, Tom, stay on the line. Don't hang up. We're going to come right back to you after these words from our sponsors. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're talking with Tom in Florida. We're talking about the immigration problem, the illegal immigration problem. And I get emails all the time saying you're just being racist. And no, I'm not. Illegal is not a race. And, Tom, you're absolutely right. The Democrats want as many of these people to come into the country as possible and register them to vote, even though they're not legally entitled to vote, knowing they will vote Democratic to get the free stuff, which the rest of America will pay for. And it's a huge scam. And I think that's why the GOP lost ground in the 2018 midterms. I mean, when I was a kid living in California, solid red, that was Republican country. And in the 2018 midterms, 4 of the districts swung blue. So that tells you what's going on.
Well, Michael, I just want to say this. I'm not racist because my wife has Spanish. Okay.
Okay.
My wife's Hispanic, so I don't even get on that because she speaks perfect Spanish, my wife. So let me get back to this. I'm not a racist, and we're not being racist. You're not a racist. I'm not a racist. I don't have a racist bone. I got a lot of Afro-American friends that I love dearly. But I'll tell you this. The ones that are racist are these ones that are saying that we're racist because they're the real racists. We're just practical. That's being practical. Hey, listen, you're trying to save your identity of the country. If these people hate white males so much, why are they coming to this country? If they are having such a hateful, they have to leave their country. So but they want to talk about when we get here, the white man's racist. Well, why are you coming here? Why is everybody always blaming the white man for being the racist? No, we're the ones that are accepting the fact that if you want to come here and be a great American, we'll accept you as you want to love our laws and our Constitution. Fine. But if you want to come here and throw your flag, wave your other flag, you want to speak your own another language? No. I mean, look, Michael, we all have I got European blood in me, German. I got Scottish in me. I got all Danish. I got all Swedish in me. I don't speak none of their languages. I wish I did, but I don't. And I don't, say, I'm going to keep my Swedish culture. Or I'm going to keep my German culture or my Scottish culture. It's great to have that, but you don't go around you promote that. No, your country is in America, United States of America, and you speak English. Simple as that.
I mean, Theodore Roosevelt said exactly the same thing. You're welcome to come here and become part of our society, but we have one language here, English. We have one flag, and, you got to follow the laws. And that, to me, is extreme common sense.
One American News plays that every day. One American News puts that on every 3 hours. They have that commercial. Well, you're saying that they always do the Teddy Roosevelt speech. While we have only one language, the Patrick Hessian's the one that does the narrating for that. And he does it every 3 hours because I watch this news network. I hear what he says because you're absolutely right. We have only one language, one flag, and one nation.
Okay, Tom, we got to let you go. We got to take a break for station identification. We'll be back with hour number 3 after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3. And the phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. I'm looking at this article here. Apparently there is a new computer game out which challenges players to survive the coming climate apocalypse. So even in the computer games, the propaganda continues here. And it's definitely an improvement over games where you just kill each other or somebody else. But I think there are some computer games out there like Forge of Empires, where you're learning to basically build a city. I think that's really very, very, very cool here. Okay. And a second Democratic staffer, an aide to Senator Maggie Hassan, has been sentenced in a scheme to break into Hassan's office to obtain and publicly post the personal information of several Republican politicians amid the contentious confirmation hearings for Justice Brett Kavanaugh. They wanted to dox him, is what they wanted to do. And the 24-year-old former aide, Samantha DeForest Davis, has been sentenced to 2 years of supervised probation with 200 hours of community service. A suspended sentence of 180 days in prison. So she got away with it. She got away with it here. Okay, there is a new report coming on out from Iowa that Biden could actually lose there. And of course, that would be the death blow for his campaign. And as we reported earlier in the week, there's already talk that he's getting ready to drop out of the campaign anyway, because his fundraising has pretty much failed and he doesn't have the money to mount an effective campaign. And unfortunately, the reality is in this day and age that you got to have a lot of money for a successful campaign for either Congress or the White House. He's just not getting the bucks. So we'll see what happens there. Okay. Down in Chile, over 1 million people have taken to the streets to protest their president, Sebastián Piñera. And Piñera has stated last Saturday he would reshuffle his cabinet after over 1 million Chileans poured into city streets across the country Friday to demand structural reforms to the country's government and economic system. Right now, the House is holding their hearings on the impeachment resolution, which they're now saying, well, we're just setting up the rules for how we're going to proceed. And as I mentioned earlier in the show, one of the most onerous rules is that Nunes will not be allowed to introduce witnesses or evidence without the permission of Adam Schiff. Now, how is this in any way, shape, or form a transparent, fair process? And the answer is it isn't. Schiff wants to just control the entire presentation. He wants to control the discussion. They were literally ordering the witness, this lieutenant colonel, to not answer GOP questions in what is formally a deposition hearing. Okay, now, apparently, the United Nations has issued a statement signaling a shift in thinking on the issue of illicit substance use. After recommending to the failed idea of prohibition just last year, the United Nations is now calling for the worldwide decriminalization of drug use and possession. The American corporate media is not reporting on this at all. And we know why. There's too much of the system that is tangled up. Profits to be made from illicit drugs. We know CIA was smuggling heroin from Vietnam during that war. We know they were smuggling cocaine up from Central America during the Iran-Contra crisis. And they're probably still smuggling it all over the place. And everybody's dipping in. Everybody's got a piece of the action. We're becoming just as corrupted as during Prohibition. Prohibition was a huge, huge mistake. They outlawed alcohol, which made alcohol a very valuable illicit commodity, and that built the fortunes of organized crime. Okay. Somebody's now trying to defend the government of California, saying it's actually private enterprise can't get things right. Anyway, like I said, the phone lines are open, 800-313-9443, and let's catch up here. Apparently, contrary to the screaming of the global warming people, there has been an explosion in the growth of sea ice. And experts are saying this could be the start of a new ice age. Well, we know that solar activity is down. We know that solar activity being low led to the Maunder minimum, which coincided with the mini ice age that hit Europe and North America. It's happening all over again. It's a repeating cycle. And the global warming people don't want to step back and say, all right, we blew it. We made a mistake. We're sorry. Here's all your donations back. I keep seeing this story all over the place, and I'm not buying this one. The story is basically that more than half of Americans want the government to censor speech. I don't think so. I think it's a big lie to try to get us to go along with censorship. I say, well, look, all your friends and neighbors want the government to censor speech, so, you know, what's wrong with you people? Story out here, Democrats really think that they finally got Trump this time. I am looking forward to the embarrassment. This impeachment thing falls apart, because it is falling apart. There was no quid pro quo. I mean, they're down to using a witness whose only ball in the game is that he disliked Trump's Ukraine policy, that he disagreed with it. That's not an impeachable offense, by the way. Let's see. Liberals are blaming Trump for the California wildfires and the killing of religious scholar Baghdadi. There's no making these people happy. Another poll out there saying more than half of American students want wearing offensive Halloween costumes to be punished. That's kind of a bit of a gray area. What offends one person may not be offensive to another. All you need is somebody who walks around saying, I'm offended by that, I'm offended by that, I'm offended by that. Look how much power you're handing these people. Apparently, they had a massive sinkhole open up in downtown Pittsburgh during the rush hour, and it ate a bus. Alrighty. And more about the protests in Chile. They're still on Omar's case for refusing to vote to officially recognize the Armenian genocide. I mean, that issue, the Armenian genocide, has been before the Congress for years, and they never do anything with it. They're only doing so now because, gosh darn that Turkey, they're moving toward the Russian sphere of influence. I got that one. Elizabeth Warren is out there saying, I fight climate change by mostly flying commercial. Tiny bit helps here. Now, the GOP plans to call Adam Schiff himself as a witness in the sham impeachment inquiry. And apparently Kamala Harris, her campaign is in trouble. Fundraising isn't there. She's planning to slash her staff and restructure the campaign. Try and regain some momentum there. Pardon me. Chuck Schumer is now out there worried that Trump will force a shutdown to impede the impeachment. They've got nothing to impeach this guy on. Now, I'm very disappointed in Donald Trump. Okay? I'm not happy with his job performance as president, but the rules are the rules are the rules are the rules, and we have to hold the government to the rules. And these guys are just out there just making it up as they go along. All right. Supposedly, the international summit where Trump and Xi Jinping were planning to sign a trade deal has been suddenly canceled. Okay. The new Russian submarine has test-fired an intercontinental ballistic missile for the first time. And another article about the exploding ice levels in Antarctica. They're also running that story about this famous forensic expert says that Jeffrey Epstein was the victim of a homicidal strangling. He did not hang himself. And I think this is being put out there to get people focused on exactly how he died and not asking the question of whether he's really dead or not, which I tend to think. Okay. Wells Fargo is warning their clients, that there's going to be a market downturn. And U.S. Treasury is considering a 50-year bond for the first time as it warns of year-end repo fireworks. 50-year bond here. Alrighty, California, on top of all the other things they're dealing with, the new census data is saying that California has the nation's worst poverty rate. There's plenty of money in California. It's just going into the pockets of a very, very few. Okay, apparently the Syrian army and Turkey are mixing it up along the border again. Apparently, there's been a mortar attack on near U.S. Embassy in the Green Zone in Baghdad. Denmark has now signed on to Russia's Nord Stream 2 project. And more accusations that the U.S. is actually inciting this unrest. Russia has sent 10 submarines to the North Atlantic, according to Norway. And Press TV is reporting that U.S. oil companies will take over the Syrian oil. On that. Okay, let's get some phone calls in here. 800-313-9443. Getting toward the end of the show. I'm getting tired and I'm a little bit burned out. So let's take a look here. Apparently, scientists have detected water, which they're calling alien water, which is kind of interesting when you consider that water is simply 2 molecules of hydrogen and 1 of oxygen. But they found it on that interstellar comet Borisov, which is the second one of these comets to come on through our solar system here. Mike, I need you to put on some music for a little bit, and I'll be right back. Sorry about that. I had a personal emergency that wasn't going to wait until the next break here. Now, Claire just brought up a subject that we really haven't talked about yet, and it relates to the U.S. just going into Syria and grabbing the oil, and they're already sending the big oil companies like Exxon and so forth to harvest that oil. And it's piracy. They have no business with that oil. It's Syria's oil. And the U.S. has actually said, yeah, we don't want the Syrian government to have access to their oil. How dare they build their country over our oil? Well, Russia already had a contract with the Syrian government to harvest and process that oil. And so Claire asked a very, very good question. What kind of response are we going to get from Russia? And if there is a response, what form is it likely to take? I think the next thing that has to happen is that the United Nations needs to step in and say, look, you can't do this. Syria did not attack you. There was never officially a war with Syria that they lost. You have no legal or moral right to just walk on in and say, we're going to take control of the oil. So how is Assad going to respond? How is Russia going to respond to this very obvious and blatant act of international piracy? All right, we got a caller on the line here, John in California. Aloha, John. Thank you for calling on in. What's on your mind?
Michael, how you doing? I'm glad you and Claire made it to Indiana safe, and I hope everything goes fine over there. Surgery. Well, you had cataracts, right?
Yeah, she's had one eye done. It was a tremendous improvement. She's happy as all get out about that. And of course, we're still getting our household more or less in order, which means primarily getting the electronics up and running. Claire's office is almost there. I need to get some special wire from the hardware store. And as I mentioned at the top of the show, I finally got my main computer assembled, up and running this morning. And you can imagine my sense of relief and celebration at that.
Oh, good. That's great. I had cataract surgery. Yeah, it's sometimes they wait on the second eye, sometimes a while, maybe a couple of months. Anyway, it went fine for me. It's great.
Yes.
My question is, about a month or two ago, I get these texts, usually I think it's from the Republican Party, and one of them said there was a representative in Congress, Abraham, didn't say if it was a man or woman or what state, that they were getting signatures together to expel Nancy Pelosi from Congress. Is there any truth to that?
I have not heard that story at all here. Anyway, we got to take another break for commercials. So, John, stay on the line. I'm going to come right back to you after these words from our sponsors. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're talking with John in California, and we're talking about that grand old asylum for the aged and infirm, the United States Congress. And I checked with Claire during the break. She has heard nothing about an effort to eject Nancy Pelosi. And the big question for me would be...
There was another thing I got, same thing last week, a text, and they're all looking for money. They want to buy votes, you put so much money. Anyway, the other thing showed a picture of Republican congressmen supposedly storming a secret meeting that Adam Schiff put together about the impeachment or whatever. Anything true about that?
Yeah, that definitely did happen. I mean, somehow or other, Adam Schiff has got the Washington, D.C. police now guarding that door. And Republicans are not allowed in, other than Nunes and his crew. This is not a transparent operation. And I think the secrecy, sending a signal, they haven't really found anything. And, they're already out there saying that this vote tomorrow is just about the rules. It's not an actual impeachment resolution. So I think this thing is going to stall.
Well, yeah, Mike, same old thing over and over. They're going to do this. They're going to take the vote. It's like I said, it's a stall. Who knows?
Yes.
What that's going to do. Let me change the subject on Representative Elijah Cummings. They eulogized him and all that stuff he did, and unfortunately, I'm not a bigot or anything. All these black politicians in these big urban areas, they've just, unfortunately, they have failed to really do anything for their own people. We got people out here, Barbara Lee, who took Ron Delma's place here in California, Sheila Jackson Lee in Texas, all of those. And It's just, same old, same old. They're complaining they don't get this or they don't want that or they're discriminatory about this. It's just same old thing.
Yep. Well, I don't think it's confined.
My final thing, and I'll get off.
Well, I want to respond to what you said, because I don't think it's just the black politicians. I think all politicians are that way. They're out there saying whatever they think will get them your votes. And once they're in office, it's all about themselves.
Yeah, I agree with that. But at least out here, that most of what you meet in the mainstream media is from people like that, more boisterous. Now we've got all Democrats out here now. My representative is Eric Swalwell. He's a young politician they brought in to carry the water, and he lives in my town. I see him sometimes at farmers markets, even jogging down the street, and I just get into conversation about other stuff I like to talk about, like veterans, helping them out, some other infrastructure. I don't get into the, some of the big stuff, make a big argument out of. But same old, same old. You read his town halls. The last big one was the impeachment. Oh, Trump's guilty. He should be impeached and all this stuff, and you got all this, and you just no. Same old, same old.
Guilty of what? Guilty of what?
Bought and paid for, Mike. Bought and paid for.
Well,
Hello?
I mean,
There?
again, yes, yeah, I'm here. You're on the air. That's a feature
Yeah.
of American politics here. But getting on back to the impeachment, they don't have anything. He has not committed a crime that rises to the level of a high crime or misdemeanor for which he can be impeached.
No, you're right. And this is, if it wasn't for the mainstream media ganging up, it would not be what it was. I mean, like I said, if you're going to do that, how come Clinton, Obama, how come they're not behind bars? How come Bush Jr. isn't? All same old, and more, even worse. Same old. Listen, one final thing, and I'll get off. The fires out here in California. John Stadmiller had a good guest on last night, Deborah from living up in the Santa Rosa area. And what she talked about, and I didn't think about this, but, you talk about, we could say global warming. She mentioned, first thing, there's a big geothermal plant up there. And she said it's a possibility that there was one of these energy weapons targeted at it that ignited a fire in the area and just, what it's doing now, burning out of control, and all these winds could be made up. But the big thing she talked about was these chemtrails in the air and all this dirty electricity in the air that just changes the temperature down to, where we're at in the atmosphere. That's something to think about, Mike.
Well, I've already made my position on directed energy weapons and chemtrails clear on previous programs. I think it's just a classic case of they weren't prepared to deal with this fire. They didn't move decisively to put them out when they first started. And it's chronic mismanagement. And now we're at the stage where they're pointing the fingers and saying, no, it's their fault. It's not my fault. Let me keep my job. It's their fault. That's where we are with this right now. Okay, well, John, gotta let you go. All right, got another caller waiting on the line. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go back to the phones here to Frank in North Carolina. Aloha, Frank. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, Mike. I'll talk kind of loud because I think there's a lot of noise in my background here, but I'll keep it brief too. But have you ever heard about this guy, former CEO of Microsoft Canada, Mike Clegg? He says that 5G is unsafe.
Well, he may be heavily invested in 4G. I mean, so far, nobody.
It may be, just another 2000, all the hype over that. But I mean, I'm hearing a lot of stuff. My gut instincts tell me that this is not going to be a good thing for humanity. And I mean, what's the purpose of 5G anyway? I mean, so we can have faster internet. I mean, isn't it fast enough already?
Well, certainly not for the other countries that are already implementing 5G. The consumers want more speed. They want to be able to stream more media. But again, in this country, we have a long history where something new that comes along that threatens an existing corporate interest is demonized. No, you don't want that 5G. That's bad for you. Okay, why is 5G any more harmful than 4G?
Yeah, well, I think 4G has been pretty harmful as well in other ways. But anyway, okay, I just wanted to get your take on it. We'll see. Time will tell.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. Basically, rather than say this radiation is bad or that radiation is bad, I think the real issue here is the cumulative amount of radio energy that we are exposed to in modern society, where it's all the Wi-Fi, the cell phones, AM broadcasting, FM broadcasting, police radios, over-the-air TV, all of it together. That's a lot of energy being absorbed by the body. And, of course, it's an issue nobody wants to look at because it threatens all these business interests. But I think that's what's going on here. I haven't seen any convincing arguments that 5G is dangerous, just a lot of people out there saying, oh, yes, it is. Take my word for it. It's really dangerous. You don't want to go there. That's not science. It's not research. It's a sales campaign or an anti-sales campaign. All right. Well, the U.S. stocks had a good day today after the Federal Reserve cuts their rate for the third time in a year. And we already talked about the OPCW here. Now, there's a very bizarre story. This is from World News Daily Report. Oh, that's a hoax site anyway. Anyway, we got another caller on the line. Daniel in British Columbia. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Michael. Yeah, I just got a kind of a shocking thing. I haven't really followed your website or much of anything. I've been doing some traveling, and I just found out about this Jim Fetzer.
Yeah.
Getting sued. It's interesting because, a lot of people talk the talk, but this guy walks the walk, and he kind of took one for the team. I hope he wins on appeal because, that's going to put him in the poorhouse. Yeah. I did actually back in the day do a lot of research on Sandy Hook. I don't know why I did. I just sort of got into it because it seemed like some kind of detective case almost. Because the more you learned after watching that Robbie Parker guy laughing after his daughter supposedly being slaughtered, you thought, there's something to this. And, after 9/11, pretty much don't believe anything that the corporate media or the government has to say. So I used to spend hours at night, go on the YouTube and make videos and so forth and talk to other researchers. There was this house that Adam Lanza shared with his mother. And on the Connecticut State website, after the alleged incident, they ended up posting a lot of the crime scene photos.
Yes.
So you had the chance to just go right through and start looking at all of them. And there's two things I noticed that were interesting. I thought they were worth talking about, and I was always meaning to make a video about this. But my channel got axed by Leonard Posner, so I just gave up. I had about 3 or 4 channels, lots of videos, and it just got frustrating after a while.
Yes.
One of the things that I noticed in Adam Lanza's room, which looked like a staged room for sure. It looked like they tried to make it look like some kid with Alzheimer's, not Alzheimer's. What's that disease he's got? Asperger's.
Oh,
yeah,
Asperger's.
Yeah. Asperger's. Yeah. There's black garbage bags taped to the wall, to the windows, so you couldn't see in, which to me made it just seem like they were trying to make nosy neighbors wonder why there's a bunch of people in there staging the thing. But behind a couch in his room, there's a couple of firing range targets. And
yes,
I thought that was interesting. And if you zoomed in and turned it upside down, you could see there was a sign on on both of them that said FBI use only. So I thought I'd throw that out there. I thought that was interesting. And none of these things, will ever prove. Yeah, none of these things ever prove. Oh, Sandy Hook was fake and everything. But when you add them all together, it's just it just makes you wonder. And another interesting thing that I saw was a picture of the liquor cabinet in the kitchen. And it just happened that all about 20 bottles of liquor had the labels facing the opposite way that you normally would if you had your own bar or action.
Yeah.
I thought to myself, did Nancy Lanza do that? Probably not. I mean, you'd want to see if you have Kahlua, you want to just see the label. So they were all turned the opposite way. Now, I don't know if there's any crime scene investigators in your audience, but that just seems like really weird because they might have wanted to know if Adam had, maybe snuck some of the liquor for himself. After all, he just killed 26 people. You think they would dust those bottles for fingerprints, but there wasn't any fingerprint dust on there. After they take fingerprints, they leave a lot of black dust around. And I just thought it was one of those really, really weird things that didn't make any sense. I'm thinking maybe they wanted to protect the companies, the liquor companies. But then I thought, well, why would they care, you know? And I just thought...
Yeah, I agree. There's something definitely very weird about that.
Yeah, you know, it just never ends. And after a while, I kind of lost interest. I started following the Boston bombing, and then got into a relationship with a woman. I'm still with her, but you know, she was like, "Oh, you know, you're into that stuff too much," and you know, I would stay up till 3 a.m. making videos. And
that's a little intense.
Yeah, and it kind of reminds me of you and Claire. Like, she loves you, you know, even though you know, most people think you're, you know, just a crazy conspiracy researcher, but you're not. You're like a truth teller, and you're getting the word out to people, and you're waking up more and more people every day.
Yes.
And I don't know. I just feel like there's something, you know, you got to do something, because and even though when you say to someone, "Oh, Sandy Hook," "Oh yeah, I don't believe any of that thing happened," most people, they just think you're completely off your rocker, because, you know, how could you say such a thing? Oh, those poor parents, and so forth. And that's kind of the reason I think they chose that particular operation with children as alleged victims, is to make people think, oh, how dare you? And look, this lawsuit with Fetzer, I mean, in the courtroom, apparently the prosecutor brought out, or the lawyer for Lenny Posner brought out a picture of his son, big blown up picture for the jury to see. Now, that's the whole thing about Sandy Hook. It was just emotional evidence. There was no real there was no pictures of bodies. There was none of that. It was just emotional evidence, and it tugged at people's heartstrings. And I give that guy credit for going. I mean, his other co-authors of that book, they settled out of court, and he stuck it to them. And from what I hear, he was, I think last Thursday, he was on John Stadmiller's program. And that's worth going back and listening to in the archives, because a lot of the little details, the judge just dismissed a lot of the stuff that he tried to put in as evidence, and he really got railroaded.
Yes,
so,
he did.
I don't know,
it was
people
a
need to go into, they need to go to jimfetzer.com, and maybe, I don't know, he needs help for his appeal for sure, because I know that's not going to be cheap. But
well, they're going to try and make an example out of him, and you know, as a warning to the rest of us out here, don't question the government's lies, or bad things will happen to you. Yeah.
That's a really scary, slippery slope, because that's exactly what they're doing, you know.
Yep.
And that guy's got a lot of super intelligent, you know, I don't agree with all the research that he does. He goes into a lot of other aspects, but, you know, he's like a mad dog biting at your ankles. And he went, you know, full guns blazing with this one. And he unfortunately lost, but I hope on appeal, I hope that somebody in the judicial system says, you know, yeah, this is not right. So.
Well, that would be nice, but unfortunately our judicial system is just as corrupt as the rest of the government. And there's something important you need to know about the trial of Jim Fetzer. There was no jury during the trial itself. The judge simply said, that's not valid evidence. We're going to stick with this. You're not allowed to enter anything else into the case. And then basically came down and said, I've determined that 4 of the statements that you made in your book against Mr. Posner are in fact libelous or defamatory. And only then did they call in the jury to make the determination of what the award would be. And, you know, again, emotional manipulation with the photos. They said $450,000.
Wow, that's just crazy. You know, it does remind me of the Holocaust denier trial here in Canada, and I forget the gentleman's name. But his lawyer wasn't even allowed to present evidence. Or that was the one. There was another one, David Irving. You know, his lawyer there's no defense against that. You can't say, oh, well, the reason David Irving believes that there was, this is all, manipulated in a hoax is because of A, B, and C. And they're like, no, you can't say that because that's defamatory towards Jews. It's the same thing. It's really scary. It's really, really scary. It's 1984 all over again.
Yeah.
Crazy. Well,
all right. Well, Daniel,
anyways,
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for the phone call. We're going to let you go and switch over to Dr. Kelly, a fellow RBN host. And Doctor, thank you for calling into the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, thank you for your work and your determination, and keep it, hang on to the reins and drive that wild horsey. I think that if there were to be a Halloween costume contest, that no doubt the medical examiner from Sandy Hook would win creepiest man on the planet, for the next century. And public records request into the medical examiner's reports would probably shine a spotlight on, most of this fraud and misrepresentation and whatever with the Sandy Hook thing. And I do also believe that it is a total hoax upon the people, using public money and, covering up and using these hearsay declarations from bar attorneys. It is just all wrong. And also in September of 2017, Senate Bill 649 here in California, which was the 5G Hueso rollout, was in fact vetoed by then Governor Jerry Brown. And my good conservative senator faxed me about 18 pages of the enrolled copy of the bill and the veto letter, yet it's still being deployed. And I'm just going to point people back to Carl with a K, Lentz, Lentz, and his work. He's kicked butt in Canada and in the United Kingdom and here in the United States. And we just need to throw out all of the bar attorney fluff and go back to man makes claims, he requires, he orders, and he wishes. And we just need, a handful of good men and a few women to actually, take the reins and ride the horsey. And thank you so much for your work.
Well, thank you very much for the kind words there. And unfortunately, we have a political system which seems to encourage and reward people with bad intentions and put them in these official positions, whether it's the judge in the Sandy Hook trial against Fetzner, or Chuck Schumer, good example, or Nancy Pelosi. And I keep scratching my head and wondering, is this really the best that we can do? Is this really the only way we can run this country now? And
and one of the other odd discoveries around Thanksgiving of 2017, I had given out the toll-free Capitol switchboard to call your U.S. congressmen, women and children, and senators, and it had been forwarded to Paul Ryan's office answering machine.
Okay.
Yeah, that's even weirder than Sandy Hook, and that number
that is very,
given
very
out
weird.
And so, yeah, keep up the good work. And can I give that toll-free number once again?
Real quick, because we're at a commercial break.
Okay, 877-762-8762. That's your toll-free Capitol switchboard, open 24 hours a day. Operators are standing by. And thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, thank you. We're going to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, last segment of our program today here. And I've been informed by our control room that following my show, they're going to run the replay of James Fetzer with John Stadmiller. And if you're interested in hearing the details, I would definitely recommend that you stay tuned to our little channel here. Getting on back to the issue of police out of control and the courts unsympathetic, there's a story coming out of Colorado. And apparently there was this 19-hour standoff between police and an armed shoplifter. Now, this guy stole 2 belts and a shirt from a Greenwood Village Walmart, fled the police, chose this house by random, and just went on in there. And the police brought in the heavy artillery. They rammed the house repeatedly with an armored vehicle and ultimately used explosives to they had this armored Bearcat vehicle, and they used 72 chemical bombs and gas grenades to get to the suspect over 2 belts and a shirt. Now, Colorado police offered the couple, whose house it was, $5,000. This is your compensation. But they'd utterly destroyed the house. It had to be condemned and rebuilt at a cost of $400,000. So they sued, and because the home was destroyed in the course of a police raid, the Lex were not entitled to compensation under the takings clause, the constitutional requirement that the government pay property owners for land it confiscates, usually under eminent domain. After all, the property was deemed destroyed in the course of law enforcement. So basically, that's it. They've been made homeless. The police blew up their home, hunting for a guy who stole 2 belts and a shirt from a Walmart. And it just escalated from there. Okay, another article on why it's wrong to chemically castrate children. And I agree, it's child abuse. It's absolutely child abuse. Okay. Talked about Twitter banning political advertising. And the Federal Reserve is cutting their rates. Oh, let's see what Claire has sent me. Claire has Roth. And apparently, this article is saying it is 1/4 of Earth's pigs have fallen victim to this disease, swine fever here. And again, let's talk a little survivalism here. Hard times are coming. Economically, food supply. Time to start getting ready for that is now. Storable food, freeze-dried, like that other caller into the show, MREs. Okay, there's the music. So the program is over. And as I said before, stay tuned for John Stedmiller's show. They're replaying the show where Fetzer is on, talking about what went down. And please spread the word of RBN. Spread the word of whatreallyhappened.com. Please support RBN and whatreallyhappened.com. Thank you very much for the support you've already given us. We'll be back tomorrow, Thursday, Halloween. So aloha, America.